Welcome to another episode of the Better Learning Podcast. My name's Kevin Stoller, and today we're going to be talking about another movie. I'm excited about this one. I'm going to pull in Carla Cummins as my co-host for the show. Carla, how's it going?
Not too shabby.
You've heard
It's
Carla's
Tuesday.
voice before. You've been on it. You've hosted Bold Women Conversation. And for the people who don't know, you want to give a little bit of your background, because I think a lot of people in our audience know who you are, but for the ones who do not.
Yeah, so I was actually really lucky to start the collaboration of the Better Learning Podcast while I was with A4LE. Spent almost 20 years with the association. And before that, local architects here in Arizona, doing marketing, facility master planning, and facility design. So that's my background. And then luckily have been with K-12 officially for 2 years and the Better Learning Podcast.
And our guest that I'm going to bring in here too is Dr. Michael Cardona, Superintendent at San Marcos in a school district in Texas. Michael, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
I love that before we started recording, you said that you're usually not politically correct. We're going to have fun today.
Yeah, we will. You might have to edit some stuff. But...
we can edit it.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about podcasts. So this format where we're talking about school-related movies, I always want to start with, like, this was the first movie that popped in your head for us to talk about. Why?
Well, so let me preface it by saying I was a high school principal, and so I had seen the movie prior to becoming, an educator, obviously. But I think when I was in San Antonio at Robert E. Lee High School, comprehensive high school, about 2,700 students, but it also had 3 separate magnet programs. And so this movie really is important to me because, you see these kids that are very different, but they're not really different, but they're separated by norms and what we think of kids. And so when I do lunch duty, I would see the regular population of students. So the high school I was at was about 80% Hispanic, 88% kids who were on free and reduced lunch. And then we had the International School of Americas, who's typically rated in the top 5 in the state of Texas and all rankings, U.S. News and World Report. You had the Northeast School of the Arts. So you had your drama kids, and then you had your STEAM kids, your engineering kids. And so you had this very diverse group of kids all coming together. And when I first got there, they were very segregated. And one of the challenges from the superintendent was to, make that campus feel like one campus. And so this movie to me was like, I saw like all these characters playing out live in lunch duty, every day on a daily basis. So.
Yeah, for sure. So the Breakfast Club, just give some of the background. It came out in 1985. It was a John Hughes movie, which, like, that era was just huge. And it was all northern Chicago suburbs, which is where I grew up, right around there. So, like, this was actually filmed at Glenbrook North High School, and that's like we played them in sports, and it was a big deal of, like, this was like the school where it was filmed. But the whole premise is really that 5 kids that come from, like, different social groups all are sitting in detention for 9 hours on a Saturday in the library. Yeah.
Couldn't happen.
My first.
You couldn't happen.
Yeah, I know. I'm like, 9 hours? Like, does that ever? I don't know. Did that ever really happen?
Yeah. Wood drugs on campus too, by the way. Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like I had detention on a Saturday, or I got in trouble for sure in middle school and had a Saturday.
Like an all-day Saturday thing?
No, definitely not an all-day. When they said 9 hours, so just so you know, Michael, I just watched it. And I was like, golly, 9 hours. School's not even that long.
9 hours.
9. No bathroom breaks.
Yeah, no bathroom breaks.
No drinks. Yeah. No napping.
Drug paraphernalia all on them. All kinds of crazy stuff happening.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I rewatched it as well, and yeah, there were some things that held up really well and were really interesting, and then there was a lot you're like, oh wow, like that would have never happened
Mhm.
in today's era. Um, but yeah, all right. So I mean, first off, just the cast of this movie. There's some pretty big names in it, at least from like the '80s era. I mean, you had like Molly Ringwald, who was like in so many of those
Mhm.
'80s movies, and
16
Emilio
Candles,
Estevez,
Pretty in Pink.
16
Yeah.
Candles,
Yeah.
yeah, like she was definitely like the lead, and then Emilio Estevez was in there. He was kind of like the jock, the wrestler guy. Judd Nelson. I feel like um, he didn't have as big a career after. I don't know. I should look
I
him
don't
up.
think you
I
did.
don't know if
Yeah,
St. Elmo's Fire was after this or before it, but I think that probably was his last big thing, St. Elmo's Fire.
yeah. He had a huge role. Like I feel like he probably was like the role that stood out the most, or like the icon, even like that image right at the end of the movie, like where he holds up one arm, like
That's the
I
Michael
felt like the
Jordan of movies, right? That's the Michael
exactly
Jordan. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
You should have that logo on all, yeah, on
There
all
is
the
a
gear
shirt. I
everywhere
think
now.
there is a shirt where it's him walking away.
Yeah, that was perfect. And then Ali Sheedy, and Anthony Michael Hall. So those are the five kids. So they were. I mean, they had like a really good cast
Hmm.
of like that era for sure. All right. So anything else that stood out to you before we go into the award things of just that, like just does this movie mean to you, or something it reminded you when you rewatch this?
So I think the big lesson is the letter at the end. I think the letter that Anthony Michael Hall writes, I think he says something to the effect of, you'll have your preconceived or you'll have your views of us, so to speak, but each of us is in our own way. We're a princess, we're a jock, we're a criminal, we're a basket case, right? And we're kind of a loner. And so I mean, that always sticks with me, like as an educational leader, and I see you shirt says radically student centered. I grew up in Catholic school system. I went K-12 Catholic school system, and so there was no idea of individualized student learning, radically student centered, like do what the nun said or else. And so we're all there's some lessons with your faith, right? We're all not perfect beings. We're all full of complexities and things, but I think they came, those 9 hours came to this realization that we're not all that different, and things are kind of going to go back to the way they were, but they're not really, because they're going to make an effort. But when I look at kids, I mean, that's the story at the end of the day. I think the message I've always tried to say, whether I was a principal or a coaching principals, is to look at kids and look at their families, understand their stories. It's not for adults to tell kids what it is they need to do. It's for us to support them and them figuring out what journey they're going to take as after they leave our system. And then if we do it right, I think this idea of this movie, if we do it right, understand that everybody's very unique, then kids will be very successful, whoever they are. And even I have three kids, two of my own and my stepdaughter, and I see a lot of these characters and playing out, and we raised our kids pretty much the same. We all, I'm sure, we read to our
Hmm.
kids, we give them experiences, but they're also radically unique individuals, and you can see it play it out, and you just can't force kids into a box. As a leader, that's the worst thing we can do, and so I think that's the lesson. Even though the assistant principal, is Mr. Hardass, they
Yeah,
still, their personalities still come out, and at the end he gets it. Like he gets it. And then there's the
yeah.
custodian that nobody really talks about. I think his famous quote is, "When I'm the eyes and ears of the school,"
And the ears,
I
yes.
and
know.
that
Yeah,
is so true, man. It's our hourly employees who sometimes society looks over, that have the most impact on what happens in school systems.
yeah, for sure. Now,
Yeah.
Carly, you grew up in Texas.
I
Michael,
did.
did you grow up in Texas as well?
I did. I grew up in
And
San Antonio. I grew up.
so
Yeah.
this was still relatable to you though, right?
Oh yeah.
Like this type of environment in school.
Like I said, I went to Catholic school system, but we're
Yeah,
not.
yeah, you
I
did.
didn't go
We're
to Catholic
sinners.
school,
We
but
do things, and we had Saturday detention, and our detention usually was cleaning up or mowing the lawn and cleaning the fields and doing all that stuff. So yeah, we had all the same things. There's just a
mhm.
perception that private schools are somehow different. They're not. They have different issues.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing for me in it is that if you think back to when they're all in that library, they all go back to their home life, right?
Yeah.
And expectations of parents, or even, what is happening. What is it, Claire? So Molly Ringwald, her dad, like she's the princess. Everyone admires her. Everyone wants to be her. She's idolized. She's like, I'm so popular. I will never talk to you again,
Mm-hmm.
right? She's an
Mm-hmm.
asshole, basically,
Mm-hmm.
more or
Yeah.
less. But in the end, she says, my mom's an alcoholic and she's in the Caribbean or
Yeah.
something. I don't remember how it came out. And then the friend used, or the one guy used it against her in the end. And she was very affected by it because she shared it. But even the bully or whatever he was, he talks about, he reenacts what his home
Mm-hmm.
life was like. And you're sitting there and you're just like, oh, you don't recognize that our kids bring that home, take that to school with them every single day.
Yeah.
And the impact that as parents, we make on a classroom too, and student experiences.
There's a doctor. She used to be the medical doctor for the state of California. She gave a great TED talk about anxiety, fear, and all this stuff. And there's the flight or what is it? The flight or fight.
Fight or flight.
When you see a bear, and the one thing
Mm-hmm.
she says was, what happens when the bear's at home, and
Mm.
you're not out in the woods. You have to go home. So I see that kind of
Yeah.
stuff, and you just never know with these kids, and I think social media technology, is a different layer of influence on these kids in a negative way. I mean, it's just an issue that many districts are dealing with. And, we took their phones away. We didn't confiscate phones. We just kind of put them away this year. And they fought us for a little bit at the high school, but 9 weeks in, they're like, kind of glad y'all did, because you see
Oh,
more
that's
kids
cool.
talking to each other, and we've had less fights, and the problems that happen when they get on their devices.
Mm-hmm. I did
Yeah.
think that when they said that 9 hours in a room without any technology, what would our current kids do? God forbid they pick up a book.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I wonder how realistic that would be. Like, in some ways, I guess my experience has been, especially at the adult level too, 9 hours in a room with anyone. I've always said like the 4 hour mark is usually like the break. Like people can like kind of put up like a wall for about 4 hours, but if you're with them for more than 4 hours, the real feelings and the real things start coming out.
Oh,
And you saw it there. I'm like, that probably would happen, especially if you don't have phones there to distract you. And it wouldn't surprise me that you walk out pretty tight after that long
oh yeah.
together. Michael, you hit one of the things in there of like the quote that I put on there is, at one point when they were talking at the end, they said, when we grow up, are we going to be like our parents?
Mm-hmm.
Because they all had issues with their
Mm-hmm.
parents.
Yeah.
And
I think Emilio Estevez's dad, I think, was pretty abusive towards him about expectations around athletics. Anthony Michael Hall's, parents, high expectations for, how dare he do
Education.
certain things, they all, and Ali Sheedy, the one, she winds up being the beauty of the group, right? And then,
yeah,
but she had her own family issues. So yeah, it's just a powerful movie, man.
yeah. All right, I'm going to jump into some of these award categories, and we'll move through them here. So, we have a bunch of them, and we can add some new categories too. So if you guys have some ideas, we may get some new ones that come from this. But the first one that we did in the style was Dead Poet Society. So we named it the John Keating Award. Was there a standout teacher or mentor character in the movie. Most of these school movies do. This one was a little harder on there. Like really, was there like an adult or a teacher mentor from there?
I would argue the custodian, because
I'm
that
like,
was
I
my
would say
first.
custodian.
he accepts all of them. He doesn't judge them. He accepts all of them for who they are, and then he kind of helps them. He kind of helps them when they're trying to escape. He was like, "Don't go this way." Like, so
Yeah,
Well, not just that though, but the principal, or the principal, who
assistant.
was he?
Yeah.
The assistant principal was down in the basement, right, going through their private files, and he's like, "Oh, mental health issues," and the custodian walks in, and he's like, "What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And then starts bargaining, right? He starts negotiating.
Yeah.
Don't tell anyone I'm doing this, because he's not supposed to be down there doing that,
Yep.
regardless of your position and your role.
Yeah.
Mind your.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I thought custodian.
I agree, and he knew that one kid by name. They never really connected.
I
like,
thought it was his stepdad. Did I just make that up in my head?
Well, they made the joke of like, "Is that your dad?" But I don't know. Maybe it was just he knew him.
I think it was inferred that he was in so many detentions. When they were down in the basement, I think it was inferred that he was in so many detentions that he saw him pretty much every Saturday.
Yeah.
Oh.
But even to me, that kind of stood out. I'm like, just the fact that he knew some of them and addressed them by their first name. I'm like, yeah, like,
he
the
knew what was
assistant
in their
principal.
lockers.
Oh yeah,
that's true.
The eyes and ears of the school.
Yeah. So the next one is the cliques. This is literally like the whole movie. We should probably rename this like this category around the Breakfast Club. I mean, the whole idea is they actually say it a couple times in the movie where they're just viewed as the brain, the athlete, the basket case, the princess, and the criminal.
Yeah, that literally still schools today. Like, you walk into cafeteria and you can see how the kids separate themselves. It might be a little bit more nuanced now. You have gamers, you have the gamers, the Dungeons and Dragons,
you have furries,
the furry. We don't have too many of those, but we have the Dungeons and Dragons group has come out, and the one thing that I hadn't gotten used to, and I'm Hispanic, but I haven't gotten used to the kids from Mexico who are into Dungeons and Dragons, speaking Spanish and talking about this. And I'm like,
oh, really?
Okay, that's a little odd. You just equate it to something Americanized, but it's not. It's all over the place.
Huh.
Yeah.
Yeah. The jocks, the jocks all sit, with each other.
Jocks are still there. Do you have like the drama?
We have the theater kids, the band kids, all sit. The choir kids sit together.
The stoners, you think about it, right?
The stoners,
like the one guy, I think Molly, or what is it, Claire was like, "Are you going to invite me to go out back and smoke with you?" And he was like, "No." No.
Yeah.
Not going to happen.
Yep. Yeah. Still there. Now they're in courtyards usually. They're not. Many of our schools have courtyards, so they hang out even in courtyards.
Yeah, in the middle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cameras make it harder now. Those are the things I'm like, ooh, they would never be able to get away with a lot of these things.
Oh, yeah.
Kids don't get away with much.
Yeah, I mean, nowadays, the AP would have just looked in the camera system and found out where they're at. Got on the intercom and shut certain parts of the wing down and funneled them a certain way.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it definitely felt like the stereotypes are still relevant, even if the categories changed a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
Class clown category.
Judd.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be Judd Nelson, right? I mean, he at least tried to play that role.
Correct. And I would say maybe Ali Sheedy a little bit. She kind of had a quirky sense of, screaming out at odd times. And you have those kids in the cafeteria just randomly throw out noises. You're like, what in the world?
Well, I thought at first, I was like, well, she's autistic, right? And then all of a sudden she starts rattling off his date of birth and his name. And I was just like, oh my God, she's that kid. She read the files. And she goes, no, I stole your wallet. But
there's a little criminal there.
But but I was like, she's different. She doesn't speak. So she seemed nonverbal in the beginning, but absolutely normal, artistic and whatever. But I think she would be a class clown for sure.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. The homecoming scene. We call it the home, but it's really like, is there an iconic scene in the movie, like where everything culminates. I had a couple finalists in this category. To me, it was either like when they were roaming the hallways and trying to not be found, which that was kind of a ridiculous scene too,
Mhm.
or one of the dancing, like
The
the
dance scene
dancing
going across the
scene.
railing is, to me,
Yes, is that the iconic one for you?
I
yeah.
think so.
Yeah,
And then obviously the end, don't you
yeah,
forget about me, that song. That's whenever that song, no matter where you're at, wherever that song comes out, anybody in their late 40s to mid 50s immediately starts,
yes,
sing, like we all know that song, Simple
I
Minds.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like that was one of a category we need to add. We need to add something about the
That'd be
music
like the
of these
category
movies
of what
that
song will they play at your death, your funeral.
the
Don't you forget
funeral
about
song.
me. Yeah.
Yeah,
Now we have our next theme, Kevin. Like what?
I know. That's right. Was there a one-liner that stood out? Like any
Yeah. I'm the
line
eyes and ears of the
dialogue?
school.
Yeah.
That was a good
I
one.
am the years. Yes. The other
Yeah,
one,
I'm gonna see
the
both
other
there.
one, just strictly from a stupid standpoint, is the assistant principal. You mess with the bull, you get the horns.
Yeah.
You're like, what an idiot. Like, because those people, like you see them and you're like, yeah, kids are not intimidated by that nowadays. Like, there are some, but the majority of kids just think you're a whack job if you start, trying to throw your weight around. Like kids intrinsically know who the boss is or who's in charge, and they react more on relationships than throwing out random threats.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there were any other one-liners. I'm like in my notes, I did do
The question he
I
asks at the end, I think, is kind of a one-liner. Who you think you are? Like that's
yeah.
the title of their essay. Who you think you are?
Who, yep. Yeah, man, there were a
I'm
lot
like,
of
I
like,
think that there's some though, Kevin, like one that I think we can all relate to, right? You see us as you want to see us.
Yes.
mhm,
And that was talking about like you really look at the different personas where he writes it out and he's like, you see us as the brains, an athlete, a basket case, a princess, and a
Mm-hmm.
criminal, but realistically, like there's more depth and breadth to who
Mm-hmm.
we are as kids and individuals. And I think that for me was one that I walked away with of like, you never know who someone truly is until you dive deeper.
Oh yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. There. Trying to think if there's any other ones. I'm just looking through the rest of my notes if there was any other like good
There's a
one-liners
I'm
that
impressed
stood
that you
out.
took notes.
well there's some quips, when they're first starting this detention, and you know Judd Nelson is keeps messing with all of them and
Oh
making
yeah,
random noises and statements under his breath, and so they're like there's just moments in time. And then even like when Anthony Michael Hall is kind of alluding to the fact that he almost tried to kill himself, but he's the one that why he's explaining why he's there. They're still taking pot shots at him.
I know. Yeah, with the flare gun.
Like,
Yeah,
Poor
yeah.
guy.
That I know. That was the one. I'm like, actually, I made a note. I'm like, wow, that was probably still very realistic today. It's like it's typically that straight A
mm-hmm,
student that's got so much stress and
mm-hmm.
anxiety built up that they are the ones that typically are dealing with those. Um, the one that did stand out to me that I thought it was pretty funny was when he kept going with Bender with the principal. They were going back and
Yeah,
forth, and he
you
was
want another
counting
one?
of how many. You want
You
another one?
want
You want
another
another
one?
one? And like, how many is that?
And
And
they're like,
he's sitting. He's like,
stop.
that's seven.
Yeah,
He's like, that's
And he's like,
70. He's like,
well,
yeah,
earlier too. That's 8.
yeah.
yeah,
Well, I
that,
laugh too when he's digging through his lunch and he's just like, I don't even
He
remember,
makes
but
a comment about his celery, doesn't it? Or so he makes a
it
Judd
was,
Nelson makes a
he's
comment.
digging through it and he's like, who'd your mom marry, Mr. Rogers?
Yes, yes, sounds like.
I don't remember what it was, but I just thought it was funny.
Have you ever wondered how a simple change in your classroom can revolutionize learning? At K-12, we believe the physical space is key. When we partnered with Gary Community Schools in Indiana, something incredible happened. Their classrooms were outdated and uninspiring. Using our radically student-centered approach, we reimagined their spaces. The transformation was nothing short of amazing. Teachers saw immediate results, students came back from winter break excited, more engaged, collaboration increased, and overall performance improved. One student even shared, "We have new furniture, it's like Christmas all over again." On the first day back, local media came in to cover the story, capturing the joy and excitement of students discovering their new learning environments. See how we can transform your school today. Visit kay-twelve.com to learn more about our innovative approach. K-12, because every student deserves an inspiring place to learn. Visit kay-twelve.com today.
All right, so this one, the realistic or ridiculous category. This piece to me is like, what? We talked about some of the things that are realistic. What was the most ridiculous that you're like, no way would that ever happen?
Like 9 hours of detention.
The 9 hours of detention was, yeah. Yeah, I don't know that you would have a Saturday detention that's longer than the actual school day.
Yeah. I thought that whole hallway scene, the way like they were so close to this guy, and the fact that you would not hear or see them, and like I'm just thinking like you're gonna hear the squeaking of the shoes in the hallway, and
or the whispering or the movement.
Yeah. The fact that they were able to just roam those without him noticing. I'm like,
what's his name crawling through the attic too, right? Like you have the scene in the basement, which I mean goes back to that family life, because all of a sudden this principal is in front of his face and he had just depicted what happened at his home, so you can kind of see this bully cowering and this very courageous kid, but then he crawls up in the attic and falls through. I don't remember where he fell through, but just not gonna happen for real.
Michael, what are your thoughts there? Where he locked him in that room with the vice principal, locked Bender in the room and basically threatens him.
I've seen, and
that's when I'm like,
I've seen that happen. Working in Houston and in San Antonio.
I thought, I'm like, if a kid like that, I mean, you're at a point where, I mean, he's probably like 17, maybe almost 18 years old, and at what point do you? Does it?
It's a reality.
Cross the line?
I mean, when I was high school principal, I had to escort a kid who was not our kid, who was trespassing, who was from out of state, and we were trying to get him off campus because there was some gang related activity going on, and one of his friends grabbed me from behind, like, "Get your hands off my buddy," and it was in front of about 1,000 people, courtyard, school's starting. And I remember kind of pulling the same assistant. I was a principal at the time, and I remember taking glasses off and my earpiece, and I'm like, "Oh, son, you just put your hands on me. Like, that's not a smart move. You don't put your hands on an administrator." And this kid bowed up to me in front of all these kids and like started bobbing like he wanted to punch me. And so I pulled my radio off and gave it to a football player and said, "Hey, hold my stuff. This guy wants to box me." So everybody's going to get one shot at me. And probably not the smartest educational move ever in my entire life, but he ran.
The kids are still talking about it.
I was going to say, how did it end now?
So the kid ran, and I turned and looked at the courtyard and I said, "And y'all follow this guy? Like, y'all think this guy's a leader?" Like, he had a chance to punch the principal and he ran. He never came back to the school, and his mother worked in the district I worked in. She was a great lady, and kid was a smart kid. He made some poor decisions, but we got the kid off campus. We didn't want to arrest a kid that wasn't ours. We just wanted him off campus. But that happened. Yeah, they still talk about it. I had parents 4 weeks later say, "Hey, are you the principal at Robert E. Lee?" I said, "I am." And they were like, "My son saw some kid try and box you and he ran. He loves you. He thinks like he loves coming to school now." And I'm like, "Oh, well, thank you. But that's not a good leadership move to take your earpiece off and say, 'You get a shot. You better make it good.'" And, it was witnessed by
you
a
only need to
lot
do
of.
it once, right? And
Well, to me, it says a lot about culture. It said a lot about the culture of the school at the time, that a group of kids, I mean, they're literally, it was morning, everybody's going to class. Like there's 1,000 kids. And it was witnessed by at least, 50 or 60 kids. Somebody could have complained. Somebody could have gone to the superintendent. Somebody could have, and the kids were like, he's trying to keep us safe. We're not, like, they understood like that. I wasn't trying to just pick on a kid. I was trying to defend the 2,700.
Yeah.
Man,
And now
that's
my
awesome.
current wife used to work for me. That's a whole nother story. She was an assistant.
Now we know where the
I know.
I've
I
never
feel
been
like we
PC
should
came
follow
from.
these stories a little bit. Tell us more.
She'll tell you I'm the only one that ever wrote her up too for being late to work. So she was an assistant. She was actually that young man's assistant principal. So she was like, I cannot believe you did that. I'm like, I didn't do nothing. He tried to box me. I mean, I'm just trying to get this kid off campus. And so she had a way of dealing with all these kids who really had some issues. And, I recognize as a leader, like there were certain kids I was not going to mix well with. It just was not going to go well. My person. So I would rather the APs, they knew who to run interference for, and they would keep certain kids away from me because, I have one rule on that campus, and, we're here for kids, but there's no kid going to tell me what to do as a principal ever.
Well, I think that goes in every aspect of life too, though. You think about it, because no matter what circumstances you're in, you just know, like, hey, Kevin's not going to respond well to me.
Mm-hmm.
Someone else should approach him with this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I just using you as an example, Kevin, because you're on the call and we work together. But you have those situations, and every part of it. It's not just with kids or even parents, right? Where you're just like, Joey needs, this is a dad situation, not a mom situation. It's just not going to go very well. So
Yeah,
the
mother,
mastery of,
that mother later on came in and she was hot, and she, was like, I heard you threatened my son. I said, well, I didn't threaten your son. Let me show you the video. So I showed her the video, showed her son, kind of bobbing and weaving. And I said, at this point, this is when he threatened to hit me. And then you could see me taking my son. I said, I'm not, yeah. So I am not going to get hit by a kid. Like, and she worked in the district, and, 2 weeks later, he got in trouble with the law, and she came in and we tried to help her out. And, I told her at that point, I said, I tried to tell you, you need to get control of your kid. Like he's heading down the wrong path. He's making poor choices. Super smart kid. But, I think he wound up later that year getting put in juvenile detention for breaking into cars. And, she didn't know what to do. I said, I tried to tell you what to do. And you have 3 other siblings. He has 3 other siblings. Now you need to focus on saving them. And he's making his choices. 17 years old. He's an adult in the eyes of the law. And we're here when he comes back. We'll help him, but there's consequences for his behavior. And she got it at the end. And superintendent called me, I think, and said, "Did you?" So I heard. I can do is tell the truth and hope he doesn't write you up. He's like, I heard you. Yes, you heard right. Yeah, that's what happened. He's like, all right, that's all I wanted to know. Did you put your hands on him? No, I didn't put my hands on him. But if you would have hit me, sir, I would have put my hands on him. I said, the law of the state of Texas says I can defend myself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man. Yeah.
Good stories.
I mean, that's a great story. It's nice you had the video there too. I mean, does that, and that's kind of actually the next category of the next gen, like where there certain elements of was made today would be different. I mean, we've talked about the technology components of it, that there's cameras all over the place now and phones, but does that give you some comfort knowing that you always have that video kind of backup?
The camera
or is that
systems,
not even cross your mind? Yeah. Okay.
I think technology is so good that I think it, I think sometimes staff members see it as hindering, but I think, it's not intrusive. We don't go look, like I'm not looking at cameras at the hallways, but when something happens, it allows you not only to have evidence to protect everybody, but it does in some cases allow you to correct errors. I mean, we have had situations where we have had to deal with employees who made mistakes and they tried to say one thing in writing. And, when we pull that camera up, it's like, we're sitting in a level 3 grievance. You tell me how I can defend you. And typically the answer is you can't defend me. It's my own behavior. And I need to go ahead and separate from this district. So, I mean, it does help. Not only it protects everybody, and it allows you to kind of reflect on situations and see how you can get better. And then, like, we use school status here. We love school status. It transcribes everything in English and Spanish. It's a way of communicating with parents. And when a parent calls superintendent, it's like, I want to talk to superintendent. So and so cussed me out. So and so, call me the MFer, and you can pull the transcript up.
I think the biggest thing is technology, right? Like every single time I was looking at that, I'm just like, how exactly would they do that now?
In Texas, that wouldn't be allowed to happen because everything has an instructional purpose. So, like, they would not have just been allowed to just sit there.
Well, though, didn't he have instructional purpose though? Because he told him to write an essay, right?
That 1,000-word essay,
and not to reuse the word. God forbid you write the same word 1,000 times.
I just think like the phones, like any one of those interactions, the other kids have their phone out. Like, I don't know, like in your situation, Michael, when you were in that courtyard, were phones prominent there? Did all the kids have their phone out?
They did. And so I was shocked that nothing got to the superintendent. Like that's was the beginning of the phone generation. Everybody had their phones.
Yeah.
Now they were probably flip phones. So the quality would have been good, but it was on camera. So I'm real surprised. Like, for me, nobody opened records, even the mom who worked in the district, but I showed her the video. So I showed it to her, and she could clearly see her son grab me from behind. And, when you make a comment to the parent, you're like, well, would you rather me call the police? Because he assaulted me technically. Then she got it.
Yeah. I thought, like, even at the end where it was just that super long scene where they were all kind of having that heart-to-heart discussion, and they talk about like, on Monday we're not going to be friends anymore. You may say hi, but then you'll say something about me when I walk away. And now I'm like, yeah, that would just happen on Snapchat or like some different technology format. It doesn't need to happen in person in there anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It just happens all the time with technology now.
Yeah. Well, would they actually even talk though is the other part, because I mean, I look at my daughter. So I have 3 kids, 2 older adult and then 1 younger, Michael. So she's 14. She's in middle school.
Oh God. You have a middle school?
Oh yeah, it's a shit show around here. It's horrible. But
she's 8th grade or 7th grade?
She's 8th grade.
Oh God.
Yeah, it's fun. It's real fun. We've had some incidents this year that, and some of these conversations about video have kind of, I recognize it, right? That you're able to go through it and figure it out, because we've met with district a couple times, not in a bad way. But anyways, I guess I don't remember the point that I was going to make, but I think like kids connecting is really difficult outside of connecting in technology. And then 2, the depth of conversation that they have about life or about experiences and the deeper parts of the movie. I can't imagine that these kids would even have those conversations or know how to navigate it when they're talking about home life or school life or expectations, or the rawness of how that impacts them individually and independently in the different facets of their experiences on a day-to-day basis, going from home to school and whatever else. I can't imagine.
Have you read The Anxious? Is it The Anxious Generation?
Yeah, The Anxiety Generation.
Yeah.
The Jonathan Haidt book.
Yeah. It's pretty good.
So my 26-year-old says that she's the anxiety generation. And so even though she's highly successful, she still has me call doctors and get, a prescription for her. Right. She's like, I can't talk to those people. And I'm like, you have how many employees and yet you can't call a doctor's office? She goes, Mom, I'm the anxiety generation, right? Like this gives me anxiety. And I'm like, it's a ridiculous excuse, but
I
whatever.
have a 24-year-old and he is diagnosed with, was it agoraphobia? He was diagnosed when he was
Is that going
17.
outside?
Yes, the fear of something
Okay.
happening. Yeah. And, he's finally a junior here at Texas State. His grades are great. He's dyslexic also, by the way, which didn't help when he was going through school. But I joke with him because we're like, hey, we're getting old. You ain't gonna have grandkids. Like, what's up with that? And pardon my language. He's like, Dad, I'm messed up in the head already. Like, I ain't got time for a woman right now. I can't even take care of myself. Like, I got to try and graduate and get a job and stuff like that. And at least he's learned how to recognize his issues. But when he was a kid, he used to be that kid that would pull the bookshelves out and then go behind the bookshelf and sleep, like
And
get
have like
himself
this
into a
own
cocoon.
cave.
And because he felt like, and he would tell you, like, I know nothing's going to happen. I just feel it in my heart. Like, I can't get my heart to stop. Like, I can't get it. Like, I know nothing's going to happen. I know this movie's fake. I know video games are not real. I know I'm not, I don't want to hurt myself. I don't want to do anything, but I just feel like the weight of the world's coming on me. And so, again, that goes to the story of these kids nowadays. It's all this cell phone and technology that just inundates them with stuff.
Yeah.
I'm sure y'all dealing with TikTok
Yeah.
and Vine and
All of it.
all
Yeah.
that
All. Yeah.
Snapchat and
All.
all
I mean,
the.
and it's everywhere now too. I mean, even just like YouTube, it's the way they do the shorts, and it's just, yeah, it just pulls you in, and it's really easy to just keep scrolling, keep scrolling.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So that's one of the perspectives in there. I know I'm looking at our time too to make sure we don't go over. But one of the really interesting things for me is, this came out. I was 9, 10 years old. I probably watched it before I should have watched it. Now that I look at like how much like drugs and sex references there were in this movie, I probably didn't pick up on all of that at the time. But now I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, we're the parents. We're the parents that messed up all the kids
Well, they don't
on
they
there.
don't show them at all, really, other than dropping them
They
off,
don't.
picking them up, and you're like, I wonder what they were like. Like, but you
Yeah,
see it,
exactly.
like
I'm like, are we doing what are we doing to our kids? How are we messing them up?
our kids are
Yeah,
like us, so just a
that's
refined version.
that's right.
I just tell my kids, like, I just am, my goal is to mess you up just a little bit, not huge mistakes, but just like little minor mistakes that we can get through, right? And it's never intentional. Like, no matter what parent you are, whether or not it's mine or yours or whatever it is, you're never intentionally making these mistakes. We're just learning as we go.
Yeah,
and and I think that that's the biggest thing is that even, all the parents that were depicted in the movie, they're learning as they go.
Yeah,
all right. So,
I think
uh,
being a principal, like I talk about the 24-year-old, the poor older one was the one, he was the Judd Nelson of the group.
yeah,
He was always getting punished for everything. And the younger one would say, like, you never whooped his, or, the older one would say, you never whooped him. And I'm like, well, I didn't need to, number one. And then the younger one would say, like, I learned my lessons from you. So I watched you and I watched why you got spanked. And then I didn't do what you did, which is true. Like, it is true.
yeah,
But then later on in life, as a dad, you realize, golly, like, I told the company line at Catholic school education came, suck it up, son, push through your feelings, push through this. And then not till he was 17, he was like, wow, like, what a failure you are as a dad. Like, the mistakes, right? You made some mistakes and stepping
Yeah.
back. And so, like, as you become principal and, an educational leader, you're like, don't judge these kids. Like, don't put them in that box. And so at the end of the day, everything right sizes itself. My son and I have a great relationship. He likes to tell me I'm wrong all the time. And he
No,
can, because
I
he has got a 3.8 in college, and I never got a 3.8. So he's doing things I was never able capable of doing, and he's doing it with a lot bigger burden than even some of our kids. So, but they all have them.
All right, next category, the substitute. If you're going to recast any of the main roles, would you swap anyone out?
The assistant principal, just because nowadays, I think I would make the assistant principal The Rock,
Oh,
and then I think I would make the princess probably Selena Gomez.
okay, I can see that.
The athlete, who's the kid in? I forgot what his name was. Timothy Chalamet would be the brain. The brain.
Oh, that's a good one.
Zendaya would be the crazy one. Just because of her
I can
movie on
see it.
HBO, she was fantastic on HBO.
Yeah.
And the athlete would
Wait.
the athlete would be the boyfriend on the show Zendaya was on, the one that was sleeping around with everybody that gets beat up at the end. Real good looking kid. I forgot his name.
Wait, are you talking Zendaya? That's the
What was that?
it called?
Euphoria? Is
Euphoria.
that what that show was?
Euphoria.
That was a
Yeah.
jacked up. That's a. Have you ever
Man,
seen
I
it?
haven't seen. I have only seen
I haven't
like
seen
one
it.
episode
Man,
of that.
it is. It's crazy. And then you realize why
But she was a drug addict, right?
she is. There's a reason, but then you see man, it's crazy. It's a good show. And then one of those kids did actually commit suicide on that show. He actually did. He killed himself not too long ago. He was fighting a lot of battles, but there's some good. Or Sydney Sweeney, I think she's in there too. She's the blonde that's in Chanel. She could be the princess.
Yeah, she could definitely pull that off. Yeah, I thought the Emilio Estevez one, you can probably swap that one out with some other ones. Even at the time, I'm like, yeah, there's probably some other ones that could pull off more of an athlete.
And the custodian could be, what's his name, Kylo Ren, whoever, the guy that plays Kylo Ren in Star Wars. He's got such a dry sense of humor, former Marine. I forgot his name, but he's good. I just watched a movie with him last night.
Nice. Yeah. I could see Vince Vaughn playing the custodian and just have that like dry, sense of humor in there. Yeah. All right. So the last question here: where are they now? A reunion conversation. If you took those characters, that was 40 years ago. Where do you think those people would be now?
Like in the movie?
Yeah, like
in real life, you mean?
Like in real life, like if you take Bender, who you're saying, like, yeah, in 5 years you're gonna be in jail. Do you think he's in jail 40 years later? Or do you think he's
I think he's his father.
Kind of found his way in life. You think his father?
I think he's his father. I think he's been in and out. He's alcoholic, abuses his kids. I think Emilio Estevez.
Oh wait, you're talking about John Bender?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, heck no. So I don't picture him that way, Michael. I'm going to challenge you. I think he's successful. I think he's driven. I think he's motivated. I think that he screwed up as a kid and he had an opportunity to walk away from his parents and make something different. Because if you really think about it, like he took one for the team in the hallway. He's like, y'all stay here.
That's true.
So
he did have some really good
ability
leadership
to
skills.
lead and to do other things in that show aren't necessarily highlighted, but the qualities of the person, like a good core person, are there. He's an asshole, right? Like he says crappy things and he's a jerk to everybody. But I picture him as successful, walking away and changing that, that generational gap of abuse and alcohol and all of those aspects.
Yeah, I could see that.
I could see that.
I could see that.
Yeah,
once he's out of the system, I think he would flourish and get away from his father. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So Emilio Estevez, I totally saw him as being something like a counselor or a psychologist or something. Like he was always the one asking me, like, well, tell me, what's your story? Like, what's your story? What are you in here for? What'd you do? Like what? I totally felt like he could do that.
I felt like Anthony Michael Hall would be successful too. I think he comes out of his being the nerd and kind of
he's probably working, working in finance or like consulting or something at like one of the big four consulting
He's definitely an
firms.
architect with a nice
Oh, an
haircut. He
architect
finally
could
came in
be.
on his own.
What's interesting is in Pretty in Pink, he's the leader nerd. He
Yeah.
becomes the cool nerd with the hot chick at the end.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
So
And Molly Ringwald, what do you think? She's like a
country club wife.
She's a realtor for sure.
Yeah, realtor.
realtor.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Perfect.
In Orange County.
Yeah.
I'm like, I feel like all the pretty girls. I look at my Facebook and I'm like, oh, they were so cute. Oh, they're a realtor.
They're a realtor.
Like,
How about Ali Sheedy? What do you think
I think she'd be like a
yeah,
psychologist too. I think she'd be like some kind of doctor or something helping people. Like
yeah.
she's no longer the recluse. She found her identity.
Yeah.
But then I could also see her being
I can
like
see that.
Batwoman, kind of a thief, socialite, but also a thief. She's gonna pickpocket you while she's taking you out to dinner.
and when she had a glow up, she could be in, I don't know, fashion. She could be an editor of a magazine. She could be like all sorts of things.
In real life, isn't
She
she the
could
one
work
that's
like
made of?
Secret Service or something. Yeah, I could see her just playing a bunch of different characters, like
Yeah.
blending in. What were you gonna say there with Mike?
I think she's the one that's been kind of the most successful is Ali Sheedy.
Yeah, she's done a good job. Yeah. Yeah.
She's like 60
Awesome.
something now. That I saw her in a show and I'm like, oh my God. And then I thought, well, I'm 57, so who are you talking to? Who are you talking about? You're the same generation.
Yeah. Yep. Well, as we're wrapping up, thanks for going through this. But I mean, as far as like real life stuff, I mean, anything on your mind or things that are going on as you're dealing with superintendency role? You've been in almost 9 years, which is a lot. Like you're like 3 times the national average as far as tenure. What are the things next for you? What are things that are on your mind as a leader?
I think at the end of the day, I think it's just trying to build systems that support kids and families that are going to outlive me. Like I tell the principals, like, I think if we do it right, then, heaven forbid, I would have dropped dead on the spot. Like people would pout, but we've done stuff well enough that the system will continue. And, we're really proud here in San Marcos. We signed a concurrent enrollment agreement with Texas State University. So we have 24 juniors and seniors who are up at the university in the mornings, Monday through Thursday. They're taking, classes with college kids. Have their college ID. They're going to earn up to 24 free hours that the university is paying for. We already have the early college. We have an early college. So, but now we're moving
Very
to
cool.
a little bit different model. And we think, working with Texas State's going to expand every department, not just certain courses. And I think that's the big one. We have a university president that's pretty innovative and he wants to do
Love
things and
hearing
he
that.
really believes the hometown university should be, he believes anybody who qualifies to go to the hometown university should be going there. Like that's his goal. And
Yeah.
I support that. And so I think,
Yeah, that's great to hear that collaboration.
Oh yeah, like
Yeah,
we've never had it. Usually in some university towns there is a segregated system, right? You have the university, and typically those professors don't send their kids. We have a lot of professors here that send their kids to our system, and it's good because I think they look beyond our accountability scores. We struggle accountability wise. I mean, we're a district that's 80% kids in poverty. Not a lot of people look at San Marcos. They look at the gateway to the hill country and they don't see $40,000, a year AMI. They don't see $389,000 home price. 70% of our families rent. Of that, 60% are home dependent. So our families are very school dependent, and we've done a lot of great work, but we have a lot more work to do. And at the end of the day, I think when a kid graduates from here, I think regardless of where they choose to go, career, military, college, we're going to be pretty confident that they're going to be supported. And if should they choose to stay in this community to be a contributing member, great. But if they go somewhere else, then we know they're going to be a contributing member somewhere else too. So
yeah,
those are the things I'm really proud of. I mean, there's not a
good.
lot of stuff we don't do. We have a lot of CTE pathways. We have the early college. We have socio-emotional counselors on every secondary school. We have communities and schools embedded in 100% of the schools. We have a really good partnership with the county, the city, and the university. And there's still more we could do. Like we're not still, it's like we're always trying to play catch up. We have school marshals on every campus. I think those have been really very unique. They're more than a safety person. The other day I was visiting one of the elementaries, and school marshal was out in front of the school with 3 boys who have behavioral issues, and they're playing catch because they had met their behavioral contracts. And so they're outside in front of the school playing catch. Here's the school marshal, and he's taking time out of those days to build relationships with these boys who don't have father figures. Like, that's not something we planned on. Like, that's just happened. And I took a picture of him and sent it to the school board members and said, some of you question whether this is like what they're doing is relevant. I think it's relevant what they're doing. And so just a lot of stuff we're doing.
Yeah, that's a great example. Just how much like any adult on the campus can make that connection. So, well, awesome. Well, I appreciate your time doing this. And to the listeners, if you're not already a subscriber, wherever you're watching, listening, this, just hit subscribe. BetterLearningPodcast.com is the hub for everything. And we have forums on there if you want to be a guest, if you have a movie idea, if you have other recommendations of topics or things that you would like us to talk about on the show. We just really appreciate this audience, this group that's all driven around the same idea here, that we want to make a difference. We all want to make an impact on education. And the whole purpose of this show is to knock down the silos and really try to get everyone talking across different areas. So, Dr. Michael Cardona, thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Kevin. Thank you, Carla.
Thank you.
The Better Learning Podcast is produced by Matt Rogers and edited by Kelly Jones. The views and opinions shared on this podcast are those of the individual speaking and do not necessarily represent the perspectives of their affiliated companies, organizations, or associations.